Hello everyone, my course on Stoicism and Practical Philosophy is now live, link in description. Theodore Kaczynski, infamously known as the Unabomber, etched his name into history as one of the most notorious serial killers in the history of the United States. Between 1978 and 1995, he unleashed a series of mail bombings targeting individuals that he perceived to be advancing technology. Eventually, his attempt to bomb an entire plane of people set off the FBI's longest and most expensive manhunt. But before all this, Ted lived a life sharply contrasting the image of a notorious criminal. He was a genius and mathematics prodigy, attending Harvard at just 16 years old and scoring 167 on an IQ test. After completing his PhD, he would become the youngest assistant mathematics professor at UC Berkeley University. However, after just a few years at his post, he opted for a life off-grid in the Montana wilderness, living in a small cabin with no electricity or running water, in an attempt to seek refuge from technological society. It was from here that he would create bombs and carry out his devastating terrorist activities. Before his capture, Ted had a 35,000-word manifesto published by the Washington Post in 1995, in which he detailed his anti-tech ideology, largely premised on the idea that development and reliance on industrial technological systems fundamentally erode individual autonomy, diminish human fulfillment, and pose a grave threat to the overall well-being of humanity. Since technology has developed considerably since this time, it's very intriguing to explore his predictions and see how well they have stood the test of time in today's advanced era. So without further ado, let's jump in. The Industrial Revolution and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race. This bold and iconic first line sets the precedent for the rest of the manifesto, and in the first paragraph, Kaczynski argues that whilst our lifespan has been massively increased, the modern technological way of life has had a profoundly negative effect on our psychological well-being, sense of fulfillment, and ultimately has destabilized human society. He predicts that the continued development of technology will worsen this situation, and suggests that it may also lead to increased physical suffering, even in our most developed countries. From the beginning, we can see that these predictions were certainly vindicated. All across the world, and particularly in the more technologically advanced societies, we have seen rates of mental illness rising drastically. Depression, anxiety, and ADHD are especially prevalent now compared to 50 years ago, as well as self-harm amongst teenagers becoming much more frequent. The self-reported happiness of Americans has also taken a sharp decline since right when Ted was actually writing this manifesto, despite us making such great strides in technological progress ever since. We now have smartphones, widespread public use of the internet, streaming services with easy access to all of the entertainment we could want. We have social media allowing us to stay connected and communicate wherever we are, as well as a plethora of new gadgets to make life more comfortable and convenient. These inventions were supposed to give us happier lives, yet we see the exact opposite. So what went wrong? Anyone who has spent time recently in a university, particularly a Western one, knows from personal experience just how afflicted our younger generation is by mental health issues, ranging from crippling anxiety, depression to ADHD. There's also an extreme reliance on medication for these issues, which Ted also anticipates. Imagine a society that subjects people to conditions that make them terribly unhappy, and then gives them drugs to take away their unhappiness. Now, at the time Ted was writing, rates of mental health disorders were already on the rise, and Ted acknowledged this. But his correct prediction that this would only get drastically worse, and the dependence on meds would rise, shows that he had some insight into the underlying causes of this issue. Even in the realm of physical health, we see astonishing rates of obesity, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, certain cancers, and many other diseases, which account for the physical suffering that Ted predicted would exacerbate as technology became more advanced. Despite us eradicating certain diseases and advancing medicine, in many ways the most advanced countries are sicker than ever. If you've ever seen a video of teenagers going through PE class from 100 years ago, you see a stark contrast to today. Most people were actually in good shape and had a reasonable degree of fitness, without any of them being overweight. But when we compare this to the physical condition of teenagers today, it's clear that something has gone wrong. Kaczynski argues that the social and psychological problems we see arising in modern society are a result of the fact that humans are not well adapted to their modern technological environment, since we are living in conditions completely different from those in which we evolved, and thus the behaviour demanded from us in the modern day greatly conflicts with the patterns of behaviour that we developed in the earlier conditions. This idea certainly has merit today. Every year, technological advancements disconnect us further and further from anything resembling a natural lifestyle, as technology seeps into every aspect of our life. Young people today have been reduced to incredibly sedentary lifestyles, spending hours on digital devices, sitting at desks, and playing video games. This excessive time spent online, particularly on social media, is undoubtedly playing a significant role in the skyrocketing rates of psychological issues. These habits contribute to a diminishing attention span, a constant craving for instant gratification, sleep disruption, and ironically, social media is making us more isolated and detached from one another. Face-to-face interaction is taking a back seat, with more and more people withdrawing to the digital realm and going through a constant cycle of distracting themselves with content suggested to them by social media algorithms and satisfying their craving for dopamine spikes delivered to them conveniently with stimulating content online. Whilst it's certainly convenient to be able to communicate efficiently with friends and family at long distances, it is fairly evident that our social lives are not on the whole being enriched by the presence of social media. Disconnection and lack of close friends are only becoming more prevalent issues. In fact, going out and spending time in nature, doing the sorts of activities we adapted to do on a daily basis, have become niche hobbies at best when people go out camping, hunting, or fishing. Ted goes on further to diagnose certain characteristics of the unnatural state of modern society as at least the partial root of these psychological issues. Among these abnormal conditions present in modern industrial society are excessive density of population, isolation of man from nature, excessive rapidity of social change, and the breakdown of natural small-scale communities such as the extended family, the village, or the tribe. But in addition to these, one of the primary problems with modern technological society that Kaczynski identified was its interference with what he calls the power process. The power process refers to the psychological requirement that humans have for exerting effort towards goals in an autonomous manner, and at least sometimes achieving success. Imagine someone who can have anything that he wishes for. At first this person would have fun, but very quickly he would become bored, demoralized, and eventually very depressed. This shows that power, possessions, and luxury are not sufficient for human well-being. We must also have goals to work towards and some reasonable rate of success. Kaczynski notes that in modern industrial society, most people can meet their basic biological needs without much effort at all. We have to go to school and acquire a technical skill, and then more or less just turn up to work on time, exert some basic level of effort, and have a basic level of intelligence. But above all, he noted that we have to be obedient to those in charge. This results in many people often engaging in what Kaczynski dubs as surrogate activities. These are artificial goals pursued for the sake of having something to do, simply in order to obtain fulfillment, rather than out of any kind of necessity. Kaczynski provides us with a method for identifying a surrogate activity. Suppose there's a person who devotes much time and energy to the pursuit of goal X. Ask yourself this: if he had to devote most of his time and energy to satisfying his biological needs, and if that effort required him to use his mental and physical faculties in a varied and interesting way, would he feel seriously deprived because he did not attain goal X? If the answer is no, then the person's pursuit of goal X is a surrogate activity. Some of the examples of this that TED provides include scientific work, athletic achievement, artistic creation, and social activism. To illustrate this, let's take athletic achievement as an example. Now, I used to be an avid runner and cyclist, and one of my goals was to eventually run the 5k in under 17 minutes. This was the type of goal that would motivate me to train every single day. But imagine that I was living a much more natural life and was exerting my effort and mental faculties in order to grow and hunt my food, create shelters and find water, and navigate a natural environment. In that case, I wouldn't have any sort of negative thought towards the fact that I couldn't run a 5k in a certain amount of time. But in my modern situation, I felt that burning passion and desire to attain that goal. Essentially, whereas we would naturally be concerned with the biological goals related to our survival and safety, such as hunting, gathering food, building shelters, finding water, taking action to prevent threats, and these tasks would furnish the goals that we exert most of our effort toward day by day. In modern life, these goals can be met in a trivially easy manner. We drive to the supermarket and collect all the food we need for a week, and the actual effort that we exert instead typically goes towards showing up to work and following the orders handed to us. The tasks we do at work have no intrinsic link to our biological well-being, and are in most cases not even ones that we feel a strong motive for. And even if we do, we usually achieve these goals as one small part in a corporate machine, following the orders of someone else rather than acting autonomously. Thus, our means of securing our biological needs does not satisfy our need for the power process, and we turn to surrogate activities to find fulfillment. But Ted points out that for most people, these surrogate activities are not as satisfying as the goals that a person would want to pursue, even if their needs to go through the power process were already satisfied. This is evident by the fact that people engaging in surrogate activities are never satisfied. Businessmen always want more money, bodybuilders always want to be bigger, etc. What we might call natural goals, on the other hand, have an intrinsic limit. Once you satisfy your and perhaps your family's need for food and shelter and safety, you don't feel a compulsion to keep attaining some further artificial goal, like you do in the realm of things like bodybuilding. This phenomenon, Ted argues, is a big reason for our satisfaction and unhappiness in modern society. Surrogate activities just provide a cheap replacement for direct, authentic fulfillment of the power process via working autonomously to secure one's biological needs, and this leads to a pervasive sense of dissatisfaction and perpetual striving in contemporary life. If you're always feeling this compulsion, this need to be doing something productive, or you feel a kind of background anxiety or guilt whenever you aren't engaging in some sort of so-called productive pursuit, or if you feel a prevailing sense of purposelessness and lack of fulfillment, then you likely can relate to this phenomenon that Ted's identified. In addition to the negative effects on the mental health of the individual, Kaczynski also predicts that small-scale communities and family ties will become weakened as technology develops. This idea definitely also accurately characterizes how life has developed in the 21st century. People around the world report that they believe family ties have weakened, and people are more isolated and lonely than ever. Modern transport and convenience has allowed people much greater mobility, but the result is less people working in the local community and more people leaving elsewhere for opportunity. Friendship circles have also diminished, with young men especially reporting fewer close friends than ever. In general, we can see from our first-person experience that our communities are not as tight-knit in the modern day, with social isolation becoming an increasing problem for young people, and with many people, mostly in cities, not even knowing their neighbours. The excessive use of smartphones and social media definitely contributes to the diminishing strength of social bonds. People are increasingly distracted by spending time online, which is not conducive to real-life connection and cooperation. Communal areas and public transport are often full of unhappy-looking people staring into screens with blank, drone-like expressions and a complete lack of real-life interaction taking place. Another core theme of Kaczynski's ideas is the use of technology to control, subdue, and manipulate people's behaviour, fitting into his overarching idea that technological society erodes human freedom. In the future, social systems will not be adjusted to suit the needs of human beings. Instead, human beings will be adjusted to suit the needs of the system. He argued that psychological techniques for manipulating behaviour would continue to increase their potency and efficiency, which is certainly something that we see today, with social media serving as a primary example. Social media platforms use algorithms to curate content and engage users. The system aims to keep users on the platform for longer periods, maximizing ad revenue and data collection. These algorithms are designed to modify user behavior, encouraging constant engagement, sharing, and interaction with content that aligns with the platform's goals. Data collected is sold to advertisers who use that information to get you to buy products. Social media operates within the attention economy, where the primary currency is user attention. The system encourages individuals to prioritize online interactions and content consumption over other activities, even at the cost of the user's mental health and genuine social connection. This small example demonstrates the idea that human behavior is often modified to fit the needs of the system, in this case the need for sustained attention and user activity. A connected phenomenon is governments, the media, and corporations all working in tandem and bombarding us with propaganda that's designed in order to shape our psychological views on various social issues, so that we can be made more compliant to the demands of the system. Modern social media exposes users to such vast amounts of information, and this is just the sort of propaganda tool for alteration of human behavior that TED envisioned. Furthermore, as of 2023, we are seeing the beginnings of biological methods of human alteration. AI is rapidly progressing, and AI technology integrating with a human being, particularly the human brain, is a huge project of inquiry and development. Take, for instance, as a case study this paper published by the British Ministry of Defence that makes the case for what they refer to as the augmentation of a human, and outlines the various technologies that could be used in the near future to fundamentally change our human nature so that we can, quote, optimize the performance of a human being. But optimize for what end? What we see throughout the paper is that the primary focus is essentially altering humans to be a more efficient tool for warfare and for optimal work efficiency via technology like brain-computer interfaces, gene editing, and bioinformatics. Future wars will be won, not by those with the most advanced technologies, but by those who can most effectively integrate the unique capabilities of both people and machines. In the article, it is actually noted that the need to use human augmentation may be dictated by national interest, and this highlights quite nicely many of Kaczynski's points about the lack of rational control that we have over the technological system. As we start to develop more and more technology to greater and greater levels of complexity, we naturally start to envisage potential ideas for further advancements and the benefit that they have for something like warfare or economic growth. What this results in is a kind of Hobbesian trap or security dilemma between different countries or different groups. Each advanced nation, for example, knows that its competition will also see the potential of a given technology, and each will consider that they could be dominated if they do not act to develop this technology quickly. Thus, this simple game theoretic consideration to keep up and not be dominated by other nations demands the charge forward to developing these technologies. Thus, in practice, ideas of rationally considering whether technology is beneficial to the well-being of humanity or whether it will have drastically negative consequences often go completely out of the window, and the imposition of technology fundamentally altering the environment, and in this case the human being itself, is forced onto the population simply out of practical necessity. Now this is just one paper, but it's certainly only a matter of time until many people are becoming augmented with AI, as the article suggests. And the nature of this vindicates Kaczynski's point that we are not the masters of technology and cannot control its directory. In line with his overall theme of technology reducing human freedom, TED points out a relatively subtle but prevalent phenomena that is a kind of paradox of choice resulting from technological advancement. Often an individual advancing technology does not seem to threaten human freedom in any tangible or predictable way, but later on it can threaten it very seriously. When a piece of technology is introduced, it may at first be optional, and so the appearance of choice is present. Or if you don't want to use the technology, then that's fine, you don't have to, mate. But in many cases, the new technology changes society in ways that then result in people eventually finding themselves forced to use the technology. Ted gives the example of a car. Initially, it may seem like the existence of a car can only increase freedom, since it is optional to get one. But then over time, the structure of our city changes, such that most people do not live within walking distance of their employment, the shops, or the general places that they must frequent. Everything becomes spread out over a distance because the existence of cars has changed society, and so using one, or public transport, becomes almost a necessity for most people. The numerous numbers of cars that are then present also then presents the need to regulate their use. People cannot just travel as they wish. They must adhere to speed limits, road rules, license rules, follow the flow of traffic, etc. Thus people are forced into a new mode of transportation, which then must be heavily regulated, and this changes the picture of our freedom that we initially had. This observation is actually incredibly pertinent for modern society, and the perfect example of this is mobile phones, particularly smartphones and also general internet access. At the time of introduction, it again seems to be entirely optional, but the existence of smartphones and the internet has radically changed the nature of human society, to the point that in the developed world, it is a near necessity to have a smartphone and internet access. A phone number is required to navigate all of the demands of modern life, whether that be signing up for services, getting a job, attending a university. All of these assume a phone number as a default method of communication. Just think about how many basic things you have to sign up for with your phone number, and that you simply wouldn't have an option to sign up for if you didn't have a phone number or at least an email address. Internet access is even more of a necessity. We take for granted just how much of our life now relies on online access. Again, to apply for jobs, to apply for university, to update tax information, to sign up for basic services like a GP. All of these require us to have internet access or a phone number or both. Now within my own life, I have two memorable instances of this phenomena which come to mind. When I was 18 years old, I started working in an office at a golf club, and was involved in sending information out to the members. This was usually done by email, however, and since the member base was mostly made up of older men, there were some members who did not have email set up, nor did they even have internet access in their home. Now for a while they could receive communications about the golf club by post, but eventually the club moved to exclusively communicating by email, essentially forcing participation in a technology that some may not wish to. The other example is that recently in the UK, train companies have been shutting down ticket offices en masse and switching to e-tickets only. This means that you need a smartphone and internet access just to travel on a train. This is a testament to the idea that technology forms a complex system and that choice of participation is largely an illusion. First, long-distance transport changes the landscape of our environment, making walking everywhere impossible. Then these modes of transport start requiring the internet, the smartphone, and other new advances in technology in order to be usable. All of this is in service of the relentless expansion of the overall technological system, a process which is blind to its effects on the freedom of humanity. This phenomenon gives us great reason for concern about human AI augmentation, such as Neuralink and the invention of chip implants for banking. We can see quite clearly that once AI integration and brain chip implants become mainstream, they will shift society radically in many unpredictable ways, and likely make it so that participation in society demands the use of these technologies, despite them completely altering your fundamental nature as a human. If everyone else has enhanced their performance massively with augmentation, then keeping up will demand that those who do not wish to also do. If efficiency of the system means that paying for goods by scanning your microchip is the norm, then it may become the only available way, and again people are forced to participate. If large portions of the population start using gene therapy to optimize their children's desirable characteristics, then competing evolutionarily may become impossible if you have to compete with real-life giga-chads and Stacies with much greater intelligence, far greater looks, health, energy levels, etc. Thus, once again, compelling people into participation. Now, circling back to dissatisfaction, one of Kaczynski's observations on dissatisfaction experienced in the modern era also highlights an important shift in the nature of our changing circumstances. Unlike previous centuries where individuals had a much more active role in shaping their circumstances through personal choices, today's rapid and radical changes are often imposed on us by a select few obscured figures making decisions that profoundly shape our lives. The advent of AI represents the epitome of this transformation, with automation already displacing numerous jobs and threatening even more disruption. Unlike individuals freely choosing different career paths, AI-driven changes abruptly alter the way of life for many, leaving them with little autonomy over the shifts forced upon them. Now, this impact extends well beyond the realm of employment. The rapid destruction of wild nature is a strong illustration of this phenomenon, where technological advancements reshape the environment around us without giving the everyday person any option to resist or influence this change. Another example of this is mass migration, which is a phenomenon that's facilitated by modern transport technology, and is essentially leading to unprecedented demographic shifts that would historically only be possible as a result of a military defeat. Yet in the modern day, the inhabitants of nations affected by mass migration have almost no autonomy over the permanent alterations or eradications of their communities, people, and culture. These changes are simply forced upon them without their consent or ability to influence the outcome. The dissatisfaction, powerlessness, frustration, and humiliation arising from such involuntary transformations really is representative of a larger societal issue, where the control individuals once had over circumstances is really just diminishing in the face of our rapidly expanding technologies. Overall, Kaczynski argued that within the complex symbiotic relationship between technology and humans, it's humans that are bending to the requirements of the system and not the other way around. The fundamental driver of technological society is not political ideology, nor is it a drive for the well-being of humanity. Rather, it's steered by technical necessity. This refers to the need to advance and sustain technology, including the development of new technologies, the integration of existing technologies into further aspects of life, and the adaptation of societal structures to accommodate these technological changes. Once a complex technical structure is imposed, it of course requires upkeep. Unique problems arise as a result of our new technology-based system, and then solving these problems steers our trajectory. Take surveillance, for instance. The prevalence of surveillance technologies is, in part, a response to security challenges exacerbated by the interconnectedness of modern society. The technological system, with its global communication networks and complex infrastructures, has introduced new vulnerabilities, leading to a demand for surveillance tools to address emerging security threats. The collection of biometric data also is a response to identity and security challenges introduced by the expanding digital landscape of the technological system. The need for robust authentication methods becomes a technical necessity to address these sorts of issues related to identity theft, cybercrime, and unauthorized access. In many cases, our complex technological world simply demands that our privacy and freedom become infringed upon, simply in order for it to continue functioning. At our current juncture in technology's development, we reach what is perhaps the pinnacle of this effect. Many of the problems arising from technological development have become so out of hand that we are rapidly pursuing the invention of AI with general intelligence above that of a human in order to solve the problems like the threat of nuclear war, climate change, environmental pollution and destruction, and so on. But these sorts of large-scale existential threats are only present because of technology in the first place. Needless to say, developing AI with general intelligence that goes beyond that of humanity is opening up yet another very large can of AI-augmented genetically modified worms, leading to more unintended consequences and no doubt infringements of freedom and privacy. On the human side of things, we are forced to adapt to our new environment at every juncture. we undergo pressures to acquire technical skills and work technical jobs to uphold the system. When the alien nature of our new environment leads to unhappiness and issues with attention span, people are medicated. As Kaczynski points out, the concept of mental health is largely defined in terms of how well a person is able to behave in accordance with the needs of the system without stress. Another theme described by Ted was the use of mass media to alter the mind and behaviour of populations. He describes how the entertainment industry is used as an important tool of propaganda and control, which once again is something we have only seen greatly exacerbated with the development of more sophisticated technology. TV shows and movies are and have been for a long time a chief method of propaganda, and social media is essentially like these methods but on steroids. Ted discusses how the entertainment industry serves as an important psychological tool of the system, as it provides people with an essential form of escape. As Kaczynski says, when a person is absorbed in television, videos, etc., he can forget stress, anxiety, frustration, and dissatisfaction he has with life. With the invention of virtual reality technology and the already discussed prevalence of people withdrawing into the digital world of social media, which then bombards them with a constant stream of personalized content to keep them occupied, it's safe to say that technology providing man an escape and distraction from life via on-demand entertainment has reached its peak. Kaczynski also noticed the inability of people in his time to be able to sit still and just be at peace with themselves and the world, and instead people had the need to constantly be occupied. Now this again is another phenomenon that's exacerbated massively. All we have to do is look around us in the modern time to see that modern people have a constant need to be distracted. People can't sit for 5 minutes without checking their phone, browsing and scrolling on social media, or putting in their earphones and listening to music, or getting home and turning on Netflix. Many people, when they're not having to go to work or school, seem to end up in a constant state of content consumption and distraction. A state that's served up to them by the modern gadgets that promised to simply enrich our lives. We are now plagued as a result by a constant impulse for stimulation, which, as Ted notes, is not present amongst those who live free from this type of technology. As for propaganda and social influence, and corporations using advertising to sell us products, once again we couldn't have a stronger vindication of Kaczynski's ideas. In the digital age, the influence of corporations on our lives has reached unprecedented levels, and social media algorithms play a central role in amplifying this impact. These algorithms, designed to maximize user engagement, inadvertently become powerful tools for mass advertising and manipulation. As we scroll through our social media feeds, algorithms carefully curate content based on our online behavior, preferences, and interactions. Corporations exploit this by leveraging targeted advertising, bombarding us with content meticulously designed to influence our thoughts, choices, and ultimately our purchasing decisions. This fosters an environment where our personal agency is being manipulated for corporate gains. Now, this isn't to mention various organizations, including governments, who take advantage of these tools for social control, as Ted predicted. Overall, anti-technological critics such as Ted Kaczynski have certainly been vindicated in many of their criticisms and predictions. We can accept that regardless of our overall stance on the utility of technology. Even if you disagree that we should go back to some pre-industrial state or hunter-gatherer based societies, you can still acknowledge that his criticisms are highly compelling, and even more so when we see that a lot of what he predicted came true in the 21st century. Now, I'm going to be making a lot more content on this topic in the near future, so if you enjoyed this video essay on the ideas of Ted Kaczynski, then be sure to subscribe and click that notification bell and also like the video, or I'll have to engineer some new advanced technology in order to manipulate you to do so.